Right, big dude in a tiny car. Oh, what's going on there, peeps? So, let's talk about this current situation in Wisconsin. Currently, I believe we're in day 3 of the riots and unrest and such, and stemming from what we've seen with Mr. Blake, Jacob Blake. Now, I am very, very thankful. I praise God that he wasn't killed. And it is tragic that he will never walk again. And did he have a criminal background? Did he potentially have warrants out for his arrest? Possibly. I think he did have some active warrants, but that isn't relevant to him getting shot 7 times in the back. Now, I look white, and I can pass for white. I am half Puerto Rican and half white dude. And my mom is much more darker complected Boricua woman. As people of color, the way of the world right now, it isn't nice, but it's reality, and it isn't just, and it isn't fair, but it's reality. We have to be better at de-escalating and defusing situations than law enforcement, who that is their actual job. The job of law enforcement, they are peace officers. They are giving tools and they are giving training to keep the peace. And far too often, the way they come at a situation and the energy they bring into the situation, it's like putting gasoline on a fire. And then, ta-da, you then got to start drawing guns and using lethal force to contain the situation because you failed to have the situation contained to start with. We've seen this time and time and time and time again, and it is infuriating. And I understand why there then are people who have that rage and want to express that. And since there isn't a specific target they can express that to, they express that towards the system, and so everything's a target. And I understand and I can empathize with the psychology of that, because if you've seen my prior videos or if you know me personally at all, I can tend to be a very angry and rageful person. And I've never gotten into a fight in my life. I've been very blessed that I've been able to control things or avoid situations where a physical encounter would be the likelihood. So, and as God is currently working in me and making me better, I'm getting a lot better with that. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. So I can understand the rage and everything involved with that. I understand it. Tactically, it's the wrong move. It's the absolute wrong move. See, as a country and as Western society in general, we're at a tipping point. There We are on the tipping point of revolution right now. And in order to see the change that we want to see, we have to fight intelligently. It's a war of attrition. We're trying to win hearts and minds, right? If we're using tools of violence, we're never going to win that fight. Because, you see, if you use tools of violence, that then establishes the rules of engagement so the person you're against can start using tools of violence. And when the person you're against has way more tools of violence than what you do, you're not setting yourself up for a fight that you're going to win. So, while it is tragic that there are people who are seriously and perhaps permanently injured, and there are people that died last night from being shot, as we seek, so too shall we find. If you seek violence, you will find violence. And I can understand the rationale of the dude is seeing his entire neighborhood and city burn. And there are businesses, people who are completely innocent in this, that are going to lose their jobs and their livelihoods because their places got burnt down. So there are people that are banding together to protect the businesses and prevent rioters from destroying them and such. So when there's a violent horde coming towards you, the natural instinct is then to defend yourself. And so people defended themselves with the legal weapons that they had at their disposal. And I don't think this is a call like, oh, well, we need to ban AR-15s, we need to ban guns. If you were to ban the AR-15, okay, you could deal the exact same level of devastation with a semi-automatic shotgun. Perhaps more devastation. Or a pump-action shotgun. Might be a little slower, but in the hands of someone who knows how to work it, not much. And instead of it being a rifle cartridge, it could be loaded up with buckshot, and you have a huge wound cavity. Or it could be loaded up with dragon's breath, and you have an incendiary fireball coming at you. Or, okay, you banned guns. Alright, so the people then come together and then used improvised weapons and explosives and chemicals and all sorts of things. Like, banning tools of violence does not stop violence. If someone wants to commit an act of violence, humans are extremely creative. Look at the prison system. Guns, weapons, all sorts of things are banned. You cannot have them. Still get their hands on them though, don't they? They improvise weapons. They, make shivs and shanks and all that. If you have it in your mind that you want to commit an act of violence on somebody, humans are extremely creative and will find a way to commit an act of violence. Similarly, if someone is trying to commit an act of violence on you, and especially if you have trained and you mentally prepare yourself for how you can respond in the outcome that someone wanted to commit an act of violence on you, you are going to use whatever tools you have at your disposal to protect yourself from someone committing an act of violence on you. So, overly long video is overly long. Point is, this is not how we win. This is not how we affect the direly needed political and social change that we need. We do not achieve it by riots and by committing acts of violence against our community. You see it constantly in the rhetoric of the people who are in power that we are wanting to get out of power. We use these acts of violence and they don't view us as, oh, wow, hey, maybe we're in the wrong here. No, they view the people committing acts of violence as savages. And they're completely lawless, and so it then shifts the mantle of being the villain and being the enemy, if you will. There's a better word for it. Can't think of it right off. Anyway. It shifts the system and those in charge of the system as being the enemy. And it shifts that onto the people who are the actual victims. Now those victims, they're the bad guys. And the system is now the victim. Trying to take out these lawless, marauding, evil rioter people. So, my heart goes out to all those affected by this. Especially to Mr. Blake and his family and those children that are going to be dealing with the trauma of witnessing their father being shot by police officers. They're going to be dealing with the trauma for the rest of their life. I mean, it's one thing as we all have been dealing with trauma on like a secondhand level, but like firsthand, within feet, to witness that. As a dad of 3 kids, I can only imagine. So yeah, I don't have a huge following, and I don't see this video going anywhere. But that's my 2 cents on this. Like, the world and the system is insanely broken. Has been. And it's not a Trump thing. It's not an Obama thing. It's not a Bush Jr. thing. It's not a Clinton thing. It's not a first Bush thing. Before that, it was Ford. They all had their roles to play, to be sure. But the system has been getting increasingly broken for decades. And we have a choice to make. We can either fight the system directly with acts of violence and riots and looting and burning and all that crap, and that will get us absolutely nowhere, because we're not rioting and looting the places that are like responsible for all this. And what's crazy is all that energy, it all gets put out in your little local area, And then the movement and power and energy is then limited to that local area to a degree. As a society, we were closest to having the movement that we needed during the very, very beginning of the Occupy movement, the Occupy Wall Street. There wasn't a bunch of fires and looting and burning shit. That you didn't really see that all like that. You know what you did see is people coming together saying we are the 99%. You had people in suits that were able to identify with the dude from the projects. That, hey, this dude in the suit he's part of my community. He's part of the 99%. And the dude in the suit, hey, this kid from the projects, or this person who's from an impoverished area, whatever, that isn't part of the upper crust society that I roll with, he's part of this. We're all getting played, dude. We're all getting played by this system. We're at a point right now. See, that the Occupy movement had them scared. It had them very, very, very scared. And there's all sorts of smoke and mirrors and stuff that they did to distract and divide us. And they've been running off that exact same playbook for years now, since then. Because that is the biggest thing the system fears. The system fears a people who are united. That's our power. And our Constitution, our founding fathers who fought in that revolution and who saw firsthand that the way you depose a corrupt top-down leadership, the way you depose them, isn't by small pockets of people trying to fight the system. It takes everybody together. Now, back then, yeah, it wasn't a peaceful protest. And King George was like, oh, well, okay, yeah, I'll let you go. Violence was needed for that revolution. And you look at other similar revolutions in the past, the French Revolution, and so forth. But right now, at this point in time, a violent revolution isn't going to unite the people. And it isn't going to scare the system. It is going to give the system license to use more power and more authority and make the situation worse. There already was a bill that went through, and what's interesting is a lot of Republicans supported it. Democrats too, but the majority was Republicans. But where the state and police and whoever, they can pull your internet data and all sorts of stuff without a warrant. That's some creepy stuff, bro. That's some creepy stuff, bro. I can kind of get it, because the internet is how different groups are able to mobilize. And make no mistake, there are definitely groups that have evil intentions, that are going to use this moment and this movement that's happening right now to further their agenda. Antagonists. And they're going to use the internet to, stir the shit pot and that kind of thing. Homegrown terrorism, that kind of deal. So I get it, but, my man's really going to park there. My man's really going to park there, isn't he? Wow, he's really going to park there. Squirrel. Where it gets real tricky is where does it, the homegrown terrorism, where is that then, where are the lines drawn? Where are the goalposts here? Because since they don't need a warrant, this video that I'm making right now could potentially be viewed and skewed as terroristic propaganda or what have you. So it's interesting, and it's a direct result of violence and control, right? And since we aren't winning the hearts and minds, we then aren't having people who are on our side. The whole idea is like, well, look, if you don't have anything to hide, then it shouldn't matter if they're looking at your stuff. This is not how we win. This is not how we win. Rioting and looting and acts of violence is not how we win. Now, I am all for self-defense, and I am all for the Second Amendment, and I think it is anymore. I would argue it is the duty to keep and bear arms and to train. That is the biggest thing, to train, to have that mindset. Because the mind is the greatest weapon. And being able to think in a tactical kind of way and be able to see the long game right now, that is absolutely vital. So, yeah, overly long video is overly long. It's your boy Jay Peasy, Miguel Gorilla, signing out.